So in about 2 hours, the Pentagon is holding a news conference to bring us the latest on Operation Epic Fury as CENTCOM releases new video highlighting the firepower of the United States military.
Yeah, this comes after President Trump paid his respects to the 6 U.S. service members who were killed when a refueling plane crashed over Iraq last week. The names of those heroes are Major John Alex Kilner of Alabama, Captain Ariana Savino of Washington State, Tech Sergeant Ashley Pruitt of Kentucky, Captain Seth Koval of Indiana, Captain Curtis Yingst of Ohio, and Tech Sergeant Tyler Simmons, who's also from Ohio.
Meanwhile, on the battlefield itself, Iran is lashing out after Israeli forces struck an Iranian gas field near Qatar. We have team coverage for you this morning. A lot going on. Lucas Tomlinson in Dubai as the Gulf states face retaliation after meeting yesterday.
But first, we go to our chief foreign correspondent, Trey Yingst. He's live on the ground in Tel Aviv with the latest. Good morning, Trey.
Yeah, hey, Lawrence, good morning. A significant amount of incoming Iranian ballistic missile fire since midnight. At least 7 barrages targeted this country. Some of the interceptors soaring through the skies of this country, shooting down the incoming fire. But there were a lot of different impact sites overnight and at least 4 people killed. At one location in the West Bank, 3 Palestinian women were killed, a number of others injured. And then also there was a worker in central Israel killed by these cluster munitions that continued to rain down. You can see at this location in the West Bank, these women were at a salon when the missile fire began. A spokesperson for the Israeli military said this about the air defense systems that are working to take down this incoming fire.
We have air defense systems. I can already say they are among the best in the world. This is proven. Unfortunately, the defense is not airtight. We use our systems to intercept these missiles. These cluster missiles are a war crime if this terrorist regime targets them at population centers. There is no difference from a regular missile except for its dispersion.
Some of this missile shrapnel even raining down on Jerusalem's Old City. You can see earlier this week there was a large piece of Iranian shrapnel that landed near the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Right now, all of the holy sites across Jerusalem remain closed. These are the Homefront Command guidelines to ensure that the population is safe. But again, you see this missile shrapnel there just feet away from the church. Here's what a police spokesperson had to say about the situation.
The decision to close holy sites, issued in accordance with the directives of the Homefront Command, has proven to be a life-saving measure. Today, shrapnel and large fragments from an Iranian missile fell within the Old City following an interception operation.
The bottom line is we are seeing escalation across the region as the United States and Israel continue to hammer the Iranian regime with airstrikes. Iran is striking back against regional Gulf countries and Israel. Guys?
Hey, Trey, does it seem to you, do we know who's running the country? I know yesterday the new supreme leader put out like a generic statement about retribution, but who's in charge? Who do the Israelis think's in charge?
It's a great question. We don't know who is in charge of Iran right now. We've not yet seen any proof of life from Mojtaba Khamenei, the current supreme leader of Iran. Last night through state media, he reportedly released a statement calling for the avenging of the death of Ali Larijani, the top official who was killed just about 48 hours ago. But we are seeing a concerted effort by the Israelis and the Americans to take out what remains of the leadership structure there. Not just Larijani, but also yesterday we reported the intelligence minister of Iran and also a top Basij commander. We expect these types of strikes to continue, but the Iranians are filling the shoes of these leaders, and they are still firing on a variety of different locations across the Middle East.
Trey, we interviewed a lady yesterday, and she's from Iran originally, and she talked about the people who are still alive and the ones that have been taken out. And she told us, this is what she said she's hearing from her friends and her family in Iran, that possibly the new leader, that his foot was blown off. He is heavily sedated, so he doesn't even know that he's the leader yet. And he possibly could be in Russia. There are reports that maybe planes from Moscow came and got him, and he's recovering there. Have you heard anything about this?
I have not. I can't match that reporting, but we do know there are serious questions about who is in charge in Iran as this war continues. What we should note is the reality on the ground, and that is that Iran still has the ability to launch missiles and drones at Israel and Gulf countries. And I spoke with a senior Israeli military official a few days ago who indicated the incoming ballistic missile fire toward Israel is expected to last for a few more weeks. And so this is not anywhere close to over. And Iran showed yesterday by targeting the energy infrastructure in the Gulf that they are willing to escalate this conflict and target countries that have not previously targeted them.
You know, Trey, the Prince of Saudi Arabia, Farhan, said this: what little trust there was before has completely been shattered. The attacks on my country and on my neighboring countries that are not involved in this conflict, that's all I'm interested in. We're going to use every lever we have, political, economic, diplomatic, and otherwise, to get these attacks to stop. Do you think that we could see Saudi Arabia go on the offensive?
Yes, and not just Saudi Arabia. I think there are a variety of Gulf countries, and Lucas will talk to this a little bit more, that are having to make serious decisions right now about whether or not to get directly involved offensively against Iran. What we saw yesterday, the Ras Laffan facility coming under attack in Qatar, was really the largest escalation of this conflict yet. This is the largest producer of liquefied natural gas in the entire world. And it was targeted yesterday with ballistic missiles. And as of about 8 hours ago, first responders in Qatar say they've controlled about 2 out of 3 of the fires that were burning there. But this is a significant escalation that will have a ripple effect across energy markets around the world. And it's part of the reason that we heard President Trump yesterday putting out a truce social. And he said, in part, quote, Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East, has violently lashed out at a major facility known as South Pars gas field in Iran. That was the initial strike that led to the retaliation from Iran. But the bottom line here is that we are looking at a rapidly increasing escalation ladder in the Middle East. And it raises questions about off-ramps and how President Trump and the administration and others will be able to ensure that Iran does not continue these attacks on regional Gulf countries and energy infrastructure that's not just used by the United States, but the entire world.
All right, thanks so much, Trey.
Sure. Let's go to Lucas Tomlinson. He's live in Dubai with more on the strikes on the energy site. Good morning, Lucas.
Well, good morning, Lawrence. Good morning, guys. Iran followed through on its threats to launch massive attacks on energy facilities across the Persian Gulf on its neighbors, and European gas prices are up 30%. This all comes after Israel launched that massive attack, as we just heard from Trey, on the largest gas field in the world off the coast of Qatar that is shared by Qatar and Iran. President Trump reacting to the news, taking to Truth Social, saying, quote, the United States knew nothing about this particular attack, and the country of Qatar was in no way, shape, or form involved with it, nor did it have any idea that it was going to happen. No more attacks will be made by Israel pertaining to this extremely important and valuable South Pars field unless Iran unwisely decides to attack a very innocent, in this case, Qatar. Now, Iran's South Pars gas field is located in the Persian Gulf and is shared with Qatar, as I just mentioned. It supplies a major portion of Iran's domestic gas and is critical to energy exports. The vast majority of Qatar's gas ships to Asia, with China the principal buyer. It's worth noting, guys, the United States exports the most liquefied natural gas in the world, a steep rise as U.S. LNG exports were effectively zero back in 2016. As a result of these attacks, oil prices have spiked. Iran has also struck oil and gas fields here in the UAE, as well as Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. Iran fired ballistic missiles at Riyadh, while diplomats from neighboring Gulf countries, as well as ministers from Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Azerbaijan, were meeting. The top diplomat here in the Emirates issuing a blistering statement about Iran's latest attack here, saying, quote, the ministry emphasized that this terrorist attack, which targeted the country's infrastructure and oil facilities, represents a direct threat to the security and stability of the region and its people, as well as to the global energy security. Now, while Iranian drone and missile attacks have decreased significantly since the beginning of this conflict, it's worth noting, guys, that in the past few days, drone attacks from Iran have increased, and Emirati air defenses have been active today. Guys?
Yes, they have. Thanks so much, Lucas. So you saw the testimony yesterday.
Yes, yes. I was watching Harris's show. We were going back and forth from different testimonies. It was very fascinating because Tulsi Gabbard, yes, the director of national intelligence, thank you, Lawrence, and some other intelligence officials in the community that work for President Trump, they were being grilled by senators. They wanted to know questions about this war, what the president knows. How often is he briefed? He's briefed constantly, they said. I think it was like 10 times per week. He's briefed just alone by John Ratcliffe, the CIA director. But he's briefed constantly about what's happening in the intelligence community all over the world. And Tulsi Gabbard talked about what's happening in Iran. And she talked about the nuclear sites that were blown up last June? It was in 2025. Listen to this.
The IC assesses the regime in Iran appears to be intact but largely degraded due to attacks on its leadership and military capabilities. Its conventional military power projection capabilities have largely been destroyed, leaving limited options. Iran's strategic position has been significantly degraded. Even if the regime remains intact, the IC assesses that internal tensions are likely to increase as Iran's economy worsens. Even so, Iran and its proxies continue to attack U.S. and allied interests in the Middle East. The IC assesses that if a hostile regime survives, it will likely seek to begin a years-long effort to rebuild its military, missiles, and UAV forces.
So, I mean, that's pretty much the stated, fact here. They have, the United States, as well as with the Israelis, has been able to attack all their targets, all their leaders, but the regime had a contingency plan, which is there's other people that are part of the regime that are operating in silos doing their own thing. Brian, the one thing that I was talking about before we got on air that I did not like, it seems like the Democrats spent more time on the word imminent, right? I mean, I just don't think that's relevant. Maybe the president started the word imminent, but I don't think it's necessary. The stated goal of the country is to destroy America and destroy Israel, and they've been acting on it.
Yeah, persistent and consistent threats for the last 47 years. And now that they were pursuing a nuclear weapon, it got really urgent over the last 12. But you could say the government's intact if you call a government intact that lost a third of its leadership.
Right.
You can call a government intact if you lose the whole A-team. Can you imagine if we lost all our secretaries? Yes, we have undersecretaries and deputy secretaries, but there's a reason why they're under and deputy. They weren't as good. So these people, the most experienced guys, are dead. And the reason why there's no women, because women have no rights there. So that's why I'm not using general terms, which doesn't seem to bother the left in this country. But I don't want to digress. So they've been targeted, and the rest are going to put on blacklists. They'll be dying on a consistent basis. The Israelis have sources on the ground. They don't have to be in the ground. So many people hate their government. They are turning in everybody. Do you know they're making direct threats to all of the policemen selling? You're on a blacklist. If you speak up and if you don't stand down, you will be dead. Make your choice. Look out for this weekend. The Persian New Year's happening, where people come out just like here and they celebrate in the streets. Will that morph into when it's not stopped because they were told not to? When they show up anyway, like they did for the Fire Festival 2 nights ago, if they show up to celebrate and there's no security forces, it'll show that the Israelis and the Americans, us, have done a great job degrading them. And will they move forward onto Tehran? After losing between 30 and 40,000 civilians innocently, I could understand being a little worried about coming out again. But I think we're really starting to destabilize the regime and their infrastructure at great lengths.
But the guest yesterday said during the Fire Festival, people came out of their houses in Iran, and it was the regime that started running and hiding when they saw drones and they heard shots being fired or bombs being blasted. Top officials yesterday also presented the intelligence community's annual report to threats on America, and it was obvious. The assessment identified China and Russia, North Korea and Iran as our top adversaries. And also, Tulsi Gabbard released the 2026 annual threat assessment of U.S. intelligence. And it's a 34-page document. And it says that lone wolf attackers inspired by extremist ideologies pose the most likely terrorist threat in the U.S. homeland.
All right. So we understand that. And we understand that the quote goes like this: the most likely terrorist attack scenario in the homeland involves U.S.-based lone offenders. These individuals take inspiration from foreign terrorist ideologies and propaganda that often exploit world events such as Gaza, the conflict to fuel radicalization and mobilization. Al-Qaeda and ISIS release media encouraging U.S.-based supporters to conduct attacks and often offer tactical guidance. We could have wrote that in 2002. So it's basically ongoing and continuing. What we do need is a $200 And Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, is going to say that today. We need $200 billion of a war supplemental. So they're going to be asking for that right up front. I don't know. Are Democrats going to look to defund a war again?
Right, not just to defund the war, but again, they just had an intelligence briefing about the threat assessment on the homeland. 80% of the intelligence analysts that work for DHS are still not getting paid right now.
Mark Rutte is stepping up again. NATO is saying we're going to be helping. Estonia stepped up. Finland is stepping up. They're making some statements like they are going to take part and help out what they have. Finland's got a navy. I'm not sure what Estonia has, but nobody has stepped up stronger than Ukraine.
She also, in the report, addressed ISIS and al-Qaeda. She said that they remain intent on targeting the United States. Their ability to plan and to execute has significantly been degraded. But they are building some steam in Africa. They've been involved in some of those local conflicts there.
Yep. The African command is actually in Germany, and they are pretty much on top of that threat. And the Russian push with the Wagner Group to assert themselves there has generally fallen flat.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.